Hi, this is Barry Pearl. You're listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Robertson, along with our guest Hal Eisner. Hal Eisner, a multiple award-winning broadcast journalist who spent the last 43 years of his broadcast career covering stories every day for Fox 11 News in Los Angeles. Hal's memoir, An Accidental Career, My 58-Year Adventure as a Broadcast News Reporter, available wherever books are sold through Palmetto Publishing as well as Amazon.com. For our listeners in the greater LA metro area, you can meet Hal Eisner Wednesday, March 4th at Vroman's Bookstore, 695 East Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena, California, beginning at 7 p.m. Hal will discuss and sign copies of his memoir, An Accidental Career. For more information, go to the events page at Vroman's Bookstore, Bromans, Vromansbookstore.com. For more on HalEisner.com. You anticipated one of my questions in talking about retiring on January 2nd of 2025. The irony is you retired less than a week before the outbreak of the fires in Pacific Palisades in Altadena, one of the biggest news stories to hit LA in a long time. And from reading your book, you had mixed feelings about that, didn't you?
I did. You know, my Sunday show producer, Hunter Lowry, who we'd worked together for years, said that I had uncanny timing for my retirement. And, you know, it's interesting. She retired on the same day I did. We retired together. And the way I planned it out, and I did plan it out, was that on the 2nd I retired, on the 3rd I flew to Florida, on the 4th I got on a cruise ship and went to Belize and Cozumel, and about 3 days later the fires broke out. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I should be in the middle of that. I know how to do that. I'm trained to do that. I have fire gear. I should be in the middle of that, telling people what to watch out for, what's going on. And you know, that just really, it was like withdrawals. But I found that there were people on the ship whose kids were losing their homes. And so I started to be there for them. And what could I do for you? And when I get back, you want me to call, and et cetera. And when I got back, I couldn't really just grab a mic and a camera. I was retired. You know, I couldn't just go jump to work. And so what I did was I went to South Pasadena, and I found a clothing drive there, and I started giving out clothes to people who had lost everything. Because what we do in news is in many ways a community service, and my Sunday show was about community service and public affairs. And that was in my blood too, and so I needed to do something. I needed to help people. And so that's what I did. And on my Sunday show, eventually we started to talk about issues related to the fires, the laws, the how-to-dos. But, you know, it really was a very strange, bizarre, and uncanny timing for such a big story to occur and for me to have retired.
One of the stories you tell in the pages of An Accidental Career is the story of what happened to you on the job one day in March 2021 when you're on the streets of Hollywood, you know, covering a story. Then all of a sudden, you become the story when a car hits you and nearly kills you.
Yeah, I became this story, which is not something we want to do. We want to tell stories. And also it became an international story because not only was it all over LA media and publications like Deadline and the Hollywood Reporter and Variety and the LA Times, but it was also national. And it was picked up, you know, by the Mirror in London and all these different international publications. You see, a story is not necessarily dog bites man, but it is a story when man bites dog. And so you have kind of a similar thing to maybe a strange analogy, but when a car hits a reporter doing an interview on a sidewalk, that becomes a story. And, you know, I standing there on Hollywood Boulevard with my cameraman. I'm interviewing the head of a tour company, a bus company, that wants to get back into full swing after the pandemic, and that's what the story I was working on was about, was getting back to biz after the pandemic. And there was an ambulance coming down the street, and so we stopped down the camera for a moment to let that go by because it was really noisy, and all of a sudden, right in that nanosecond, an SUV jumps the curb, hits my cameraman, hits me, hits tourists, and goes into the front window of a market right by the El Capitan Theater and across from the Chinese Theater. So it's right in the heart of Hollywood. I flew through the air, as was evidenced on city cameras that were on top of light standards, kind of like Superman, I guess, without a and down on my face I went. And the thing I discovered was the humanity of all of this was just unbelievable. The people around me they had their cell phones out taking pictures and videos, which is fine. But they were also saying things like, don't move. You may have broken bones. Just wait for the ambulance. Just don't move. And, I wasn't going to move. There was blood dripping down my nose. I was down on the ground. I don't want to get too graphic, but, I had fractured ribs. I had a fractured knee. I had a lot of injuries. My cameraman had a lot of injuries. He had a collarbone disconnected that had to be screwed back in. There were tourists. Two sisters came down from Washington State for a sisters' weekend in Hollywood. They ended up underneath the SUV. And if you see in the book, there are pictures of that. There are probably about 150 pictures of things in this book. But also on Google, if you put in Hal Eisner and crash, you'll see the SUV. You'll see the window it went through. You'll see a lot of the images that went out on the air. And it was devastating. It was a horrible tragedy. Authorities said we could have been killed. It was just that bad. And when the car jumped the curb, he did it at 40 miles an hour. So it was not a light bump. And I'm grateful because the people around me were caring, but also my social media blew up. Everybody was worried about me, worried about my cameraman Joab Perez, and it was just unbelievable. I mean, people really showed their love, and I believe that all that love and caring really lifted me up, and it helped me get through this crisis. And another thing was my mindset, which was I'm not going to let some guy who had been drinking in the middle of the afternoon and got behind the wheel end my career. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to Frank Sinatra, and I'm gonna keep going, and I'm gonna get back in front of that camera, and I'm gonna show everybody I'm okay, and then I'll retire when I want to retire, and that's how it turned out. And you know what? To this day, people come up to me and say, "How you feeling? You okay? I remember that day that you got hit by that vehicle." So it was community that came to my rescue at a time when I really needed it, after years of being there for the community.
Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call Karen Strain at 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
Ed Robertson, thanking you for listening to the TV Confidential podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button so that you won't miss our next episode.
Hi, this is Mariette Hartley, and you are listening to TV Confidential.
One of the things you'll learn in the pages of Hal's book, An Accidental Career, folks, An Accidental Career, available wherever books are sold, Palmetto Publishing, as well as Amazon.com. One of the things you'll learn, particularly in the chapters where Hal talks about his growing up years in Pittsburgh and later Dallas, Texas, is that Hal's father, who we mentioned earlier, lingerie salesman, also often on the road, during the early part of Hal's life, he was also hit by a car he was driving, but he was also involved in a very bad accident, and it was important to Hal's father to keep working as part of his rehab, getting back on his feet. Did you draw inspiration from your dad's experience as you fought back from the accident that nearly killed you, Hal?
That's interesting that you picked up on that. I guess like father, like son. I don't know that I don't know. I don't know. Look, the fruit isn't too far from the tree, right?
Yep.
And I'm not sure that I necessarily thought about what Dad went through because I was so wrapped up in what I was going through. But my dad got hit by an 18-wheeler,
mm-hmm.
and it caused him to have to take some extraordinary measures to keep working in order to feed the family, and he had to get he paid somebody to be his driver so that he could keep working and he could keep going from one city to another. He, was had a territory of Texas and Louisiana and Arkansas, and he really did like me, I guess, as I think about it, because he still had to take care of us, and to take care of us, he had to keep working. I ended up getting workman's comp, which helped me get through that financially. And, I don't know if Dad had that. But it's an interesting parallel you draw. And I hadn't really thought about it in that terms. But, yeah, I guess like father, like son.
An Accidental Career, my 58-year adventure as a broadcast news reporter by Hal Eisner, available wherever books are sold through Palmetto Publishing as well as Amazon.com. For more on Hal, HalEisner.com. Plus, you can follow Hal pretty much everywhere on social media. We have at least 4 people in common besides Harlan Bowl. I don't know them. We do.
We know people.
We don't. We know. There are several people who have crossed my path and who have crossed your path. You probably know most of them better than I do, but this is going back to the schmoozing part of what you do and to some extent what I do. It's always interesting when I find commonalities among people. One of the people we have in common is Ray Richmond, your collaborator on the book. Another is Christine Devine. I don't know Christine as well as I know Ray, but Christine's book, as I recall, is very similar to your book, Hal, in that it is less about her than it is about the people in the stories that she discusses in her book. So that's one trait you both have in common.
It's funny, when I first really connected with Christine, and we're dear friends, to be clear, but when we first connected at Channel 11, she used to say to me, I was so intimidated by you, you came from CNN. I was like, how can you be intimidated of me? I'm just Hal, And to this day, we're still friends, and, she's always been very kind to me, and I've treated her like, the best I know how to treat somebody, and she's a wonderful person. Ray Richmond, what a wonderful guy. I mean, I really have so much respect. And, it takes a village, like I said. And I had sort of this wonderful team to put this book together. The cover, which is really unique, is really an oil painting, hand-painted by Liat Silvera, who is a fine artist. She's a fine art artist. And I'm actually going to get the actual wall painting of this to frame and put up here.
Cool.
It is a really cool cover, and I wanted something that wasn't just me standing in front of a camera holding a microphone, which you often see with reporters who tell stories in books. I wanted it to be something that was more creative, more artsy, more something, and we started looking at pictures and then the picture that's on there is actually me at a podcast mic from the podcast studio at Fox 11. And she painted this thing in first she was starting with ink, and then she tried black and white and grays, shades of gray, and she came up with this picture here that's on the cover, which is just tremendous. And so I'm very proud of that. And Jamie Knapp has been my technical guy, and he's helped us with, HalEisner.com. He revamped that. I started that in the year 2000. 4 years before Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook. I guess I was a visionary. And it was not to be social media, but it was really intended to be sort of a place for me to talk about news.
Yeah.
And as social media started to pop its head, I gravitated there, and HalEisner.com just sort of hung out there for a while in its original form. Jamie and I turned that thing around. We made it a book companion, so we can add stories to it. And there's a wonderful interview that I did with Elsa Ramon, and a veteran, an anchor woman here in Los Angeles of several stations, a radio reporter on KNX. And Elsa sat down with me for a couple hours. We did this interview after she read the whole book, just like you read the whole book. And we broke that up into 6 pieces and put that at the bottom of HalEisner.com for anybody who wants to scroll down and take a look at that. It sort of, goes into greater detail than what the book has. And then underneath that, we have a place for people to ask questions or to write reviews, which maybe you'd like to do now that you've read the book. So that's on HalEisner.com, everybody, if you're interested.
Yeah, HalEisner.com. You can follow Hal pretty much everywhere on social media. Hal's book, An Accidental Career, My 58-Year Adventure as a Broadcast News Reporter, available through Palmetto Publishing as well as Amazon.com. One of the things I learned in reading An Accidental Career is another person you and I have in common is Barry Pearl. Now, this is the way the universe works sometimes, Hal. I just spoke to Barry about a week or two ago. He's directing a play in Long Beach that will be running by the time this conversation airs. And I learned, one of the things I learned in talking to Barry is, like you, giving back to the community, giving back to the industry is very important to Barry, as it is through you. And among other things, you work together on Camp News, the boot camp you've been running for 25 years to help mentor the next generation of broadcast journalists.
Barry and I got to be friends a number of years ago. And I love Barry Pearl. He's just an amazing guy. He was one of the Thunderbirds, right, with John Travolta
in Grease.
Yeah. And he still looks a lot like that younger Barry Pearl.
Yes, he does. He is well preserved. Yes.
But he's a wonderful guy. He has a great schmoozability factor. And I guess that's the last time I saw him, we were at a party together here in L.A. But, he's just terrific. And Barry contributed to Camp News as one of the actors to help out in the story that we're putting out there for college students to cover. And, he is way high on my list of people I like in my book.
An Accidental Career, My 58-Year Adventure as a Broadcast News Reporter by Hal Eisner, available through Palmetto Publishing as well as Amazon.com. If you listen to us in the greater LA metro area, you can meet Hal Eisner Wednesday, March 4th at Vroman's Bookstore, 695 East Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena, California, beginning at 7 p.m. For more information, go to the events page at Vromansbookstore.com. For more on Hal, HalEisner.com. We'll play part 2 of our conversation with Hal Eisner next week on TV Confidential.
Now you can fly anywhere in the world and pay discount prices on your airline tickets. Book a flight today to London, Paris, Madrid, or anywhere else you want to go. And pay a lot less guaranteed. Call the International Travel Department right now at Low Cost Airlines.
800-222-0511. 800-222-0511. Again, that's 800-222-0511.